You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Tonight's account is from a man who grew up in the deep woods of southeast Alaska on Prince of Wales Island, where Sasquatch doesn't just live in legends, it walks the gravel bars just 75 feet away. This is a story of Nick Blankenship and what came out of the woods that summer by Thorne Bay. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to an individual. His name is Nick Blankenship today, about his experiences he's had around Thorne Bay in the Prince of Wales Island area of southeast Alaska. This area has actually come up at least once on other episodes of the show, so I'm excited to hear Nick's story today. Nick is also a published author. He has a book about his experiences called Mythical Owl. You can find that if I'll have links to it. It's on Amazon. But welcome to the show, Nick. It's a privilege to talk to you today.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Nick, taking a look at your book, it sounds like you truly have experienced a lot of things that are out of the ordinary. But, I would invite you to take us back as far as you need to share exactly what it is you've been experiencing over the years and how this does relate to Bigfoot in the Prince of Wales Island area.
My name is Nick Blankenship, and we moved to Prince of Wales Island, Thorne Bay, Alaska in 1988. My father was a Baptist minister and a logger. And so he moved us here for work and ministry. I was early teenager, my 8th grade summer, and a bunch of my friends and I, we went camping on a river, the Thorne River. Thorne River flows into the Thorne Bay, and the bay is one of the inlets here, the mouth of the ocean. And our bay is pretty big, and then it leads out to the main water. The ocean, and there's plenty of bloodlines that flow into the Thorne River, but Thorne River is the major bloodline for all these streams and things that flow, and we get all kinds of fish in there. We get wolves, black bear, all kinds of deer, and major amounts of birds, bees, everything just kind of is along the Thorne River. So like I said, it was my 8th grade year, and it was summertime. A bunch of us went camping, and one of my buddies came back, and we were supposed to set the tent up. A couple of us were putting sleeping bags in the tent. A couple of us were building a fire, and another guy was out just gathering little sticks of wood and stuff like that to keep the fire going. Middle of the summer, so you're talking if it's 70 degrees here, it's blazing hot. Today it's going to be almost 70, so it's going to be a scorcher for southeast Alaska. Thorne Bay is probably the warmest spot on the island. We're a major inlet, so we don't stick out, so we don't get the wind and stuff like other communities and camps on our island. And so the guy came back with some sticks, and he goes back out to get another load. And he comes back very early, and his face is just in panic shock. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. And he said, "Hey guys, you got to come with me. You guys got to check this out." And we're like, "What?" We thought he maybe saw a bear or a wolf. He's like, "Don't say a word. Just follow me." So we walk down the river, and we're camping right on the Thorne River, but we're at Gravelly Creek. It's a little stream that flows into the Thorne River. And so he's asking us, step on the bigger rocks, try not to make a lot of sound, just come with me. And we're like, "Oh, okay." So we walk down to the river. The fish are jumping. Everything's, just beautiful southeast Alaska day. It couldn't get any better. We come around the bend, and literally about 75 feet away, there was this reddish brown, hairy creature, but it was squatting right by the riverbank. It would have been to our right, so we were looking at its right side of it. And all of a sudden, it just stood up like a human would stand up. It didn't have to push off the ground like a bear would with its front paws. And then when a bear stands up, its front legs are kind of sticking out in front of him like a zombie. You know, they're kind of funky when they try to walk on two legs. But this thing was squatting, you know, just like a human would squat. And it stood straight up, effortless. It just, boom, it stood straight up. And it looked right at us. And it just walked through the river and onto the other side. And as we were standing there, we could see that it was smashing a rock on what looked like a bunch of dead fish. It was like it was beating up these fish that were on the riverbank. And when it stood up to look at us, we noticed that it was female. It had breasts. And we instantly, all of us have been hunters. Our dads are hunters. And we were in utter fear of, like, whatever this is, if it's a female, it probably has a baby. And it's weird when I describe it, even just now, I could feel the chatter in my voice of whatever that was. It really freaked us out. And it stepped through the river. The river was about 5.5, 6 feet deep at its deepest. It's not really that wide of a river right where the bend is. But when it walked through it, it was still, you know, waist high on this animal, this creature. It had dark brownish red hair, long hair, 4 to 6 inches maybe. And it had a sloping front forehead, kind of like it went back to a cone. And when it turned, when she turned, its head would only go part of its full direction. Like you and I could turn our head back and forth. This would turn to where it almost met the shoulder, and then the whole top of the body would have to turn to look. So it didn't have as much movement as a human does. It didn't make any sound. It just walked across the river and onto the other side. We all just started freaking out. We're like, we can't believe what we just saw. No way we saw this. It's in broad daylight. It's like 2:30, somewhere between there and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Super bright out. The sun's going to stay out till like 11:30. And then it's back up like at 3. So like we get a lot of sun here in the summertime. And it was just beaming on this creature. We left our camp. We left our tents. We left our sleeping bags. We left our food. We left everything. A couple of us had bicycles. A couple of us had motorbikes. And I had a 3-wheeler. And I put as many people as I could put on my 3-wheeler, and we putted home. Home was like 3 miles maybe away from our campsite. And we all made it back. We all told our parents what we had just seen. And my dad, being a logger and an avid hunter, he just grabs his rifle and goes back out with a group of guys that used to work for us. All they could find was just some bloody fish on the fish bank, and that was it. There was no footprints, nothing. She was standing in rocks, not mud, so there wasn't like there was footprints available. And at that time, a lot of the fish start dying off, you know, around August. So you see a lot of dead fish on the banks, or fish that have only been eaten by a bear. Maybe it's just a head bitten off and the rest of the body there. So nothing looks too out of ordinary. Fear. I did not want to be part of a Bigfoot abduction. And all of us we were just freaked out for many, many weeks. It was just something that it was the first thing you thought of when we woke up. It was one of the last things we thought about when we were going to bed. And it was just fearful and more majestic, seeing something that's not supposed to be there. So that was my 8th grade summer and going into my freshman year. I wrote a story about it my freshman year when we went back to school in September. I was in my English class and I wrote what I had just saw just weeks ago. I made a Bigfoot replica out of Mountain Dew bottles and bunny fur. And I sewed it all together, and I had the big liter bottle was its body, and I had little Mountain Dew bottles as legs and arms, and I covered it in bunny fur. And my aunt, she's a seamstress, so she had all kinds of weird beads and funky eyes and stuff like that you could sew on shirts. I sewed its eyes on there and some teeth. And it was part of my presentation. My teacher liked it so well that she kept it up on the top of the blackboard, I think 2 or 3 years after I had graduated. It was just something that resonated with the school. It resonated with our community. Several of the other kids as parents. I mean, we're a tight-knit group here. My school at the time was only 212 kids, kindergarten through 12th, and we're all in one building. Most of the buildings here and homes were on floats. Even today, you're only going to find maybe a handful of houses that actually have a foundation. We live in rural Southeast Alaska, and that's basically my first real encounter with Bigfoot. Since then, there has probably been about 20 years of nothing. It was just normalness, normal hunting, camping, fishing, doing the things we love to do here on our island. But it never left my back of my mind what I saw. It's totally ingrained in there. It's burned into my memory. It's part of, I think it's part of who my DNA is and what makes me. I also want to add, and I think that this goes along, and I hope other people listening to this would resonate with them, is when a person's at true bliss with who they are, and they're totally comfortable in their own being, and they're truly having fun with their loved ones, whether that's family members or best friends, I think that's when the paranormal steps in. Since then, I've learned that it's not supposed to be scary, because most of the things that's happened to me has happened when I was having the most fun time of my life, whether I'm just with one of my best friends and we're laughing and we're having fun, and then something appears. It's never when I'm down. It's never when I'm upset. And so it took almost 20, 25 years for me to come to that realization that usually when I'm having true fun and my heart is pure, that's when these things appear. And so 20, 25 years goes by. I'm out here with my sister's 2 kids, and we're camping, and we're at Sandy Beach, which is 6 miles out of Thorne Bay. So it'd be maybe 9 miles away from my Bigfoot encounter from when I was in 8th grade. I take these kids out, my sister's kids, and we're camping. We're having a great time right on Sandy Beach. And we hear this, what sounds like a woman screaming in the woods. And this is around midnight, maybe a little after midnight. And we have a small fire, and it's starting to die down, and we're going to retire to our tents and just chill for the night. And we've been up all day swimming and hiking and just playing and having fun and enjoying Southeast Alaska. And we're about to go to bed, and we hear what sounds like a woman screaming or crying in the woods. And I'm like, what was that? Did you guys hear that? And they're like, yeah. And it did it again and made this screeching, almost like a baby cry, but almost like a woman crying sound. And, we grew up here. I mean, I've been here since 1988, and you don't really hear those kinds of sounds. It was just something totally different. And again, here we were, just my sister's kids and I, and we're having true fun, and our hearts were right. And I honestly believe this, that when you're having fun, that's when they appear. Anyways, the back of our tent was right against the forest. The front of our tent would look out over the ocean. And we could hear the footsteps as it's coming closer into camp. And it made this time it sounded almost like a lion roar, but at the end of it, you could kind of hear like a woman's cry. And it freaked us out. And I don't want to sound tough or nothing, but I probably would have stayed if it wasn't for my sister's kids. They were, I think one was 13 and the other one was like maybe 10 at the time. And so they were done. They were like, nah, we want to go home. And I could see my car. My car was across this little river that we had to cross. The river was a stream, really, and it was like ankle deep. We, again, left everything there, our camp, and I said, we'll just get it tomorrow or the next day. And we drove home. We drove all the way into town. My wife was up. I had texted her and saying, we're coming in. I didn't tell her why, but when we got there, the kids could not keep their mouths shut. They were freaking out. So after they go to bed, I was telling my wife, I was like, yeah, something was there. And it sounded like a baby crying. It sounded like a woman trying to lure us in for, like she needed help. And those kinds of things just never leave your psyche. I live right against the woods right now. My house, if I go 100 feet in any direction, I'm in major Tongass National Forest. I am in the wilderness. And so you can't really get away from it. We live here. We live in our woods. We're a part of it. I'm Native American. My First Nation is Tatpilam Kolowitikan, one of the first tribes from Texas. And I honestly believe that my Native American heritage and just being in tune with who you really are and comfortable in your own skin kind of helps open these doors for these sightings. Again, after I got married and we were having our second child, and this is where Bigfoot and the paranormal in my life kind of starts to really come alive, if you will. Excuse me. We were in Ketchikan, Alaska, which is like, I think about 60 miles offshore of this island onto another island, Ketchikan. Ketchikan has like 14,000 people or so, maybe a little more than that. But that's where the hospital is. We do not have any hospitals on this island. We have a few small clinics. And if your wife or whoever is going to have a baby, you have to go to Ketchikan and stay there at least 2 weeks before due date, all the way up to your due date. And if you go past the due date, you just stay. You're not allowed to have a child here. You have to go to the hospital. So we're there for like 10 days before my second child is about to arrive. And I'm downstairs in the lobby and I'm trying to get coffee and a Coca-Cola for my wife and, a donut or whatever they have down in the lobby. And I see this guy, and this guy's name is Dr. Robert Alley. And at the time I had no idea who he is. My parents are pretty famous around these islands for the ministry and for my dad's bluegrass band that he plays in. And my dad plays guitar, banjo, mandolin, fiddle, the bass. I've seen him play the piano. My mom plays the accordion and she plays the guitar. My sister plays the piano. My aunt and uncle play music. So everybody's involved in our churches here. So I see people all the time that know my parents but really don't know me. But this guy, he's going around in the lobby talking to people about Bigfoot. And I'm sitting there listening and I'm stirring my coffee and I had my drink in my other hand, the Coca-Cola. And I'm like, well, this guy's talking to all these people in the hospital who are waiting for their loved ones, whether it's they're sick or they're having babies or whatever it is. He's just chatting to anybody. I have no idea who this guy was. So finally he looks right at me and he says, hey, young man, have you seen Bigfoot? And, like 14, 15 other people just sitting around in the lobby look at me. And I gave him that kind of half smile, like, yeah, bro. Like, if anybody in this room has seen him, I definitely have. And he goes, I got a tape recorder. Can I record your story? And I'm like, sure. So I sat down in front of all these people. I don't know them from nothing. And his name is Dr. Robert Alley. So I tell him my story. He's recording it. And he says, dude, I want to get you on one of my videos. And you could watch them on anything like Netflix and stuff like that. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. So he took my information and my story and he listened to me. He asked some great questions. So I told my story to Dr. Robert Alley. So I go back, we have our child and we go back home and I'm telling my father that I met this guy. And Dad's like, man, that name sounds familiar. And so Mom found him on Facebook, or I think it was Facebook, and said, is this the dude? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, he plays bagpipes. And we met him at the Bluegrass Festival when we were playing our bluegrass music. And it was in Ketchikan. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And they're like, yeah, we know this guy. We play music with him. And so I was like, well, that's cool. So years go by again. And I want to say, let's see, 2000, I don't know, 2000, between 2018 and 2020, somewhere in there. I've had a few other weird encounters that weren't Bigfoot encounters, but they were just weird paranormal stuff. And so I got interested in knowing more about this Dr. Robert Alley. So I started looking him up and my wife, and we found out that he is like this kind of world-renowned Bigfoot researcher that's been doing this since the 70s. And I had no idea who he was. I just thought he was some old guy wanting to chat. I just thought he was a dude that played bagpipes. I had no clue that this guy was an anthropologist and a chiropractor. So he studies anatomy, studies how the body works. And I'm like, man, I really got to get a hold of this guy. So we're in Thorne Bay, and one of my good buddies and I, we had left my cousin's house. And my cousin's house is literally, it's about 70 feet from my parents' place. But that's just cutting through the woods. But we were walking on the road, so it's about, to you guys down south, it would be like walking 2 blocks. So we're walking home, and I thought I saw this beer can on the back of my Mitsubishi Lancer, but it looked like a tall boy beer can. And I don't drink alcohol. And I was like, what? One of my buddies probably put that up there. What is that? And so being that my dad's a minister and all those things, it's like, dude, I don't need that coverage. Get that off my car. So we're walking down the road, and I noticed what I think's a beer bottle on the back, or a beer can on the back of my car. And my friend David was walking with me. And Dave's like, what do you think that is? And I was like, dude, I don't know. And all you could see was one little tiny street light. And now where I live in Thorne Bay, at those times, there was only maybe 3 street lights in town. We don't have any red lights. There's no such thing as a stoplight, not like that. These are street lights that you see. And back then, we only had a handful of them. Now there might be 12 street lights in all of town. So it gets major dark here after hours. Everything is closed after 5 o'clock. The store closes at 7, and that is it. There's nothing open. There's no gas stations. There's no banks. There's no malls. There's nothing. We live in the wilderness here. We had nothing after 5 o'clock. And so we get up to it, and it's not a beer can at all. I don't know what it is at first. I walk right up to it, and my buddy turns a flashlight on it, and it happens to be a white owl just sitting perched on the back of my fin. I reach out and I grab this owl with my bare hands and I pull him into my chest. And the top of this owl's head is on the bottom of my chin. And it's just like you would do your puppy dog, where you're just kind of rubbing your chin on it. And you're like, hey, little guy, how you doing? That's how this bird was to me. And I held it for about 45 seconds. And my buddy's standing there with the flashlight. David's like, I can't believe you just picked up an owl. And then as soon as we were just kind of chatting about it, it just flew straight up out of my hands and was gone. It disappeared when it got above the streetlight, and it was just gone. We didn't think anything about it. It was just one of those things. Most of my friends tell me that, I have these weird gifts like that, where if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen to me, kind of thing. And I just kind of chalked it up as, okay, cool. I just picked up a white owl, and how rare is that anyway, that it's a white owl, and how crazy it is that it allowed me to pick it up. It didn't fight me. It didn't try to get away any weird way. It just kind of nestled into me for a few seconds before it flew away. So things like that had happened over and over in my life. We're living in Arizona, and well, let me backtrack before I go to Arizona. So my same friend and I, we were having a great time at my cousin's, and David and I are walking home, and we're chatting, and we're acting like we must be the only 2 people on the planet. We're having loads of fun. And that's when this owl appeared. So same friend, and this would be, I want to say 2009 or 2010. I can't remember. So we went out the road, and literally from where I'm sitting right now, I can almost see the mountain that we were on. And we drove up to look for deer trails and signs of deer, so that we know where we want to go hunting the next day. There's a couple spots in Thorne Bay here that if you get in the wrong spot, you'll be where there's a lot of wolves, and so there seems to be less deer population. And we just wanted to make sure we were on the right ridge and the right mountain. So we went up, and we were literally, I want to say, 2 miles out of town. So the weird thing is this is only about a mile away from where I saw Bigfoot when I was in 8th grade. We're basically across the street, but up the hill from the river. And we're up there, and this weird light, it looked like a rock on fire coming in. And my buddy goes, look at that rock up in the sky. And I'm looking up, and it's pitch black outside. And this is like November, maybe early December. So it's snow on the ground and super cold. And we see this rock it looked like it's hurtling through the sky, but it looks like it's on fire. And there's flames, and it's just weird. And all of a sudden it stops over the bay. And as it stops, you could see that it had a reflection on the water. So now it looks like there's 2 of them, but it's just one. And I hop out, he hops out, and we're looking at it. And I go, dude, give me your flashlight. And so I flashed SOS at it. And it's a good 5 miles away or so from where it stopped above the water to where we were. We were way up on this ridge. I mean, high up, looking down onto the ocean and looking down on the muskegs and stuff like that, where all these deer should be. And after I flashed SOS at it, it was immediate response. And this light starts coming towards us, but it's moving kind of slow. About a half a minute, maybe a minute goes by, and it's right against the mountain, but it had came in too low. And all of a sudden, it starts kind of going up the side of the ridge, and we're looking down on this weird light. I grabbed my buddy's 308 rifle, and I looked through the scope at it. And I say this in my book, Mythical Owl. I said, I'm going to punch a hole in it. And my buddy's like, dude, please don't shoot that. Don't shoot that light. And I was like, dude, I'm freaking out. This thing is right here. And it was huge. As it started to come up the hill to us, we realized it's like 300 feet round. It's just this huge, weird light. As it finally gets about eye level with us, it winks out from the outside edges inward, and it disappears. And we're looking through the scope, and I'm like, where'd it go? He's like, I don't know. And like 20 seconds later, it turns on, but up higher and to the left of us. And now it has the advantage. It's looking down on us. From before, we were looking down at it from the ridge as it's making its way up the hill. We hopped in our truck. We drove down the road until we hit the pavement. And right where the pavement hits this road, if you go out of town from there, it's only a half a mile to where I saw this Bigfoot. So we go towards the house, and we end up over the sort yard. And what we call sort yard is, it's where the loggers used to bring in all the logs, and they would sort it out to the different companies, whoever's buying lumber or shaking shingle or whatever. You would go and have your band of logs at this place. So as we get to the sort yard, it's right above town. You can start to see the lights of town. And I called my wife. All of a sudden, this light comes right over top of the truck again. And we stop and we both get out. This time, David gets out with his 308, and he's looking straight up at it. And I could see the light go through his scope and hit him on the face. And I'm dark skinned, I'm native. And so I looked kind of purplish green. And he's this white dude, and he kind of looks bluish gray color. And we're chatting the whole time, like, what is this? No sound. It's just this huge light. It's bigger than anything we have in town. The only thing that I had to describe how big it was our gym, our high school gym, because we don't have malls. We don't have any big buildings here. So the biggest thing we had was our gym. And I said, dude, it's got to be about the size of a gym, right? He's like, right. Now, this is the same cat I was with, the same guy I was with when I found this owl on my car. So again, I only started piecing this together later in life, after I had my fourth child. And that's what made me write the book, Mythical Owl. I was like, man, this is weird that this thing's happened to me when I feel like I'm at true bliss in my life, or I'm having just a really good time with whoever it is. It seems like these things appeared. And so we're in Arizona, and we're living there. We're out of Alaska, and we're like, okay, we're down here now. And I kept most of that story to myself. My family, a couple of my friends knew about the light that we saw, and I really wasn't paying any kind of attention to it at all. And then all of a sudden, in the late 2000s, like within the last, I want to say maybe 4 years, maybe, I've heard a lot more people say, man, I saw Bigfoot, and then in the same area, I'll see these weird lights, or I saw a UFO light, and then weeks later or a year later, I see a Bigfoot around that same area. And it just drove me mad to where I was like, man, I don't know what it is. I don't know the connection it is. I don't know if there's a vortex there or what. So in my book, I took pictures of these weird lights and weird things in the sky, and I added them into my book. I took pictures of aerial view maps of where it was on the river where I saw this Bigfoot creature, what I would say was a female at the time. And I tried to give as much information as I could. So we're in Arizona, and I tell my story, and I'm looking for somebody to help me figure this out. It got so much that I mean, I was seeing things, my kids started seeing stuff, and it was like, this is happening so often now that it's like either, I don't know, I think it's like generational, like they're going to let me see these things and then they're going to let my kids see these things. And it's one thing when you're a child and you see whatever, and you're a young person and a young adult and you see these encounters, but it's different when your kids start seeing them, because then you start having these thoughts like, man, what if they take my child? What if my child was abducted? What if my child got hurt or killed by these weird creatures? And it starts putting things in a different perspective. So I couldn't let it go. So I got on this page called MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. And I started chatting with somebody. I have no idea who they were. And I started telling my story about Bigfoot at Gravelly Creek, Thorne River. And the person said, look, you're on Mutual UFO Network out of Arizona. I can't help you. You have to find a representative in Alaska to help you. And I'm like, okay. So I get on the online again, and we find the guy, and he's way up north, like almost Wasilla. And his name is Frank Solless. So I get a hold of him. I have this dude as my personal friend on my phone now. We've been buddies now for like 4 years. But at the time, I have no idea who this cat is. So I call him up, and we're talking. And I said, look, dude, I'm from Prince of Wales Island. I'm from Thorne Bay, and I saw Bigfoot. And I see these weird lights in the sky. He took my information down. He took my stories down. And I had many of them that I told. And I was telling him, you know, one time we're going to have to we have to meet and do this and do that. And he's like, well, actually, I'm going to Phoenix, Arizona for a UFO conference for this Mutual UFO Network. And I'm going to a workshop in Phoenix. How about we try to hook up and you tell me your Bigfoot story while I'm there? And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So now I have two people that are in my corner, Dr. Robert Alley, who is an anthropologist, Bigfoot researcher. And now I have Frank Solless, who is paranormal research, a broad spectrum of that. Mothman, UFO, anything you want to think of, he would be doing those things. So after he heard my story, Frank Solless, he's in Arizona, and he's telling another Mutual UFO Network representative. This guy's name was Dennis, and he was a ETR, which means an experiencer, someone that not only heard stories, but has had their own encounters with the paranormal. And he believed that when that light was in the sky and it turned off and then it winked back on 20 seconds later, like I said, that really didn't happen. It didn't wink off and then turn back on. That was like us passing out and then us reawakening again. So he thought we were abducted by a UFO. So now he's like totally freaking out. He's like, dude, I got to meet this dude. So now I have three people that are seasoned vet in the paranormal that are wanting to know my story. And so my wife and I, we drove up into Phoenix from the east side of Mesa to meet with these guys. And we met with them. I told my stories. We shared information. and we tried to keep in contact with each other, and so on. So we moved back to Thorne Bay from Arizona. We're like, let's go home. Let's move back. The kids, it's better for us to live up there right now, and let's just go home. So we're on our way back. Frank Solless has no idea that I'm moving back to Thorne Bay. I move up here, and one of my best friends says, hey, man, until you get your place, you can live with me. And I was like, dude, I got 4 kids and my wife. Are you sure you could take 6 people? He's like, dude, it's fine, man. We're homeboys, dude. We're friends. I'm like, okay, man. I go, we're coming. So we hopped on the ferry out of Bellingham. We got to Ketchikan. We got on another ferry on that island in Ketchikan, Alaska, over to Prince of Wales Island. And then we drove right on into Thorne Bay. I wasn't in Thorne Bay 3 days. And my phone rings. Cell phone, blah, Frank Solless. I'm like, what does this guy want? So I'm like, hey, Frank, what's up, bro? He's like, hey, man, I'm on Prince of Wales Island. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, my wife and I came down from Wasilla. We just had to see where you saw this Bigfoot. We had to see where you saw these lights in the sky. I got Geiger count. I got radiation stuff. I got, everything that you see on the TV shows that they use for paranormal. And he's like, my wife's going to do all the notes, and she's going to write stuff down. We're going to take interviews with you and whoever. So he had no idea that I was in Thorne Bay. He was just traveling here and ends up here like within 3 days after I have arrived. That in itself, to me, is almost paranormal. So I took Frank and his wife up, Deborah's her name, up, and she was Mutual UFO Network also. So we went up to the hillside, and I was like, look, right here's where the light came in. This is where the light was stopped over the bay. This is where we think it winked off and turned back on. This is where it was when we pulled the gun out on it, the second time we pulled a gun out on it. And I said, right here's the riverbank. This is where we saw Bigfoot when I was in 8th grade. And they were totally awesome. They took pictures, and they took their Geiger calendar or whatever you call those things, and radiation stuff. And they were on top of it. And since then, Frank Solless and I have been really good friends, and we've stayed in contact a lot. Most of the pictures that I have in my book, they're all daytime pictures, except for I think 2. But most of them are just stuff I see. I take a picture of it with my cell phone, and I put it in my book. I was not going to write a book at all. I was just trying to jot down timelines and my experiences. And my wife said, look, you should write this into a book of short stories and just kind of share what you've been in. So as I was doing that, I started from when I was a child all the way to adulthood. And through that, I learned that my grandparents had seen stuff, and my mom and dad have seen things. Lots of my aunt and uncles had seen stuff. And I started putting it together, and it's like, man, this is like generational. My mom had a Bigfoot encounter on the east side, I believe it was, of Washington State, where she says she had a 308, and from the end of the barrel to where the stock of the gun starts was like 18 inches. And she said the Bigfoot prints in the snow were almost as big as her gun barrel. And she was like, that's wild. Stories of, my grandpa being freaked out, thinking that there was, a ghost or something, or a demon trying to hold him at night while he slept at one of his sister's homes. My grandma swears and my grandma can't read or write. She's from West Virginia. And she was telling me way, way, way back when I was maybe 17 years old. And then this lady cannot read or write. She's never been around any of those kinds of things. And she said she saw the Mothman. And again, none of these things resonated with me until I started writing my book. And when I wrote my book, I started looking up how far is it from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to where my grandma was born and raised in West Virginia. And by the bird flies, it's just a few hours away. And I was like, man, And that timeline of her seeing it when she was a little kid, or a young woman anyway, it could have really been the same creature that people were calling Mothman. And so there's just, it's weird. I don't think that these creatures are in every family tree. Again, I think they're generational. I also believe that and I've said this probably too many times already, but when you really are having a true experience with your loved ones and you're really loving them and enjoying your time, I think that these things come through, whether it's another vortex or they just appear. And I think it's because they themselves are pure at heart. Maybe they don't know what it's like to have weird struggles or whatnot. And in my book, I write things like, what is it if someone gets abducted, whether it's by Bigfoot or aliens or whatever it is? Sometimes people are brought back. And that's what Dennis Johnson and those guys thought, that maybe we were abducted and brought back. But what about those ones that go missing for years and people just chalk it up to, they drowned or a wolf got them or a bear ate them? Yes, those things happen, but sometimes these things happen to people and they're just gone. And that's where the fear side comes in on my bet is, man, I don't want my kids messed with. I don't want that kind of stuff. And my kids themselves see things. Sometimes we see them together. And in my book, I also have pictures of what they call black pillows that were floating right above our swimming pool in Arizona. And this was right before I met Dennis and Frank Solless in Phoenix. So again, I mean, when they asked, hey man, when was the last time you had your encounter? I was like Tuesday. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, dude, like I see these things all the time. And so it just, never stopped. And when I wrote my book, it literally took me about a year to finish it. And I wrote it. My wife helped me with the timelines and stuff. And it was therapeutic. And since then, there's a few places on the island that I just don't like to go. One of them is Gravelly Creek, and it's on the Thorne River. Now, I live on south side of Thorne Bay now. So I have to cross over the Thorne River Bridge, and then I have to cross over Falls Creek, and then I have to pass over Gravelly Creek Bridge to get to town. So if I want to check the mail or go to the grocery store or get gas, I have to literally drive right by where I saw Bigfoot every day. And on this island, I've been to the mountaintops, I've been in the valleys, I've been all over hunting, hiking, fishing, camping. Nothing bugs me, really. It just seems okay. But every time I go into Gravelly Creek, I get creeped out. Even right now, like if I were going to go walk down Gravelly Creek, I would grab my gun. I don't go down there without some kind of a weapon anymore. I just don't. Ever since I was in 8th grade, every time we go down through there, I get freaked out. And my kids want to go swimming on the Thorne River all summer long. Like when we go swimming, it's fine. But when we get close to the Gravelly Creek area, I just start getting quiet. I start getting freaked out, and I don't like it. We had a lady in our church, and this would be Craig, Alaska, which is like 45 miles away from Thorne Bay on the other side of the island. And one day after church, we were chatting, and I said, hey, and I won't name her name, but I said, hey, have you ever been to Gravelly Creek? And she's like, yeah. I go, have you ever felt anything weird? And I wasn't trying to lead her into anything. I wanted her to tell me. And she said, yeah. She's like, every time I go to Gravelly Creek, I feel weird. And I said, when you go down the trail from where you park at going into the river, which side of the trail freaks you out? In my mind, I know it's the left because that's where our camp was. That's where we saw this Bigfoot creature. And she automatically, right in front of my father, who happened to be the pastor of this church, she says, to the left. And she had no idea any of this Bigfoot stuff. She had no idea that I had saw it. Sasquatch, Yeti, Kushtaka, whatever you want to call them, hairy man. And I looked right at my wife like, see? And this lady was a Native American also. part of the Tlingit Haida tribes here on our island. And so through that, we started interviewing all kinds of people in a sister city of ours is Kasaan. And there was plenty of people over there that had, which is right down the street from where I saw Bigfoot. And they were telling me how they see a family of Bigfoot one time. Some lady got taken a long, long time ago, and they believe that Bigfoot took her. I think as close as 2010, they had to shut the school down because a family of Bigfoot walked through and freaked all the kids out. And I don't remember the exact time frame, but over in Kawak, which is another native village on our island, they had to shut down a giant mill for a couple days because somebody had seen a Bigfoot in there. And it got so crazy and so adamant that the workers out there, the loggers and the mill workers there were like, dude, we saw this Bigfoot, that it enticed, I forget the name of the show, but it's a Bigfoot show that comes up. And they actually did a whole interview on the island about some of the guys here that had seen those things. I wasn't a part of that interview and I was not a part of the show, but I used to work at that same mill, and I was just, all those things came about. It makes you start wondering and thinking, man, what is going on? And so, yeah, my book was therapeutic for me. My kids love the book. They've read it a couple times. All their friends have read it. There's been a few people here in town that were like, dude, I can't believe you wrote a book. And they went and bought it. And then they were like, dude, that's so cool that you see these things. And again, when you live in a small town, I think there's only like maybe 350, maybe 400 people in Thorne Bay now, today. So I would say probably more than half of those people I know personally. And we're a tight knit. And so a lot of these people have heard my story growing up and maybe had just kind of forgotten about it until I wrote my book, and then it brought back some of their own thoughts. But yeah, I mean, everything. North Thorne Bridge, I pulled up there one day and set out, and I just clapped my hands really loud, just clap, clap, clap. And I had a response that sounded like a tree knock right around the corner. And it was just, it makes the hair stand up on your head, or you're like, that is wild. But again, I don't think it happens to everybody. I don't really feel that you have to be Native American to experience these things, even though I do know that, to the Native clan, it's not a myth, So I didn't call it the theological owl, it's the mythical owl. But in a lot of our Native cultures, they're there. They're not looked at as taboo or false. They're looked at as just what it is. And that's just part of it. You got to watch out for them. Bigfoot is the man of the woods, is the female of the woods, is the caretaker of the woods. So yeah, those things just resonate. And through that, it helped me write my book. And, like I said, Frank Solless, the mutual UFO, he got a hold of my friend David, and David told him the same things. It was like, yeah, man, my buddy caught this owl, and yeah, we saw these lights, and then that enticed me to go ahead and write the book. And I'm like, you know what, I got to do this. And so that's basically it in a nutshell for what I've seen and done. But in my book, I describe it probably way better because I had time to actually really think about it and use more descriptive words. But yeah.
Nick, that whole account is incredible. The whole story is just so amazing. I do have some questions and things to ask you here, if that's all right.
Sure.
I would imagine, do you have a picture of the Bigfoot replica in this book as well?
No, I do not. I drew a picture of what I seen, but I did not have a picture of the of the little bunny thing that I had made
Okay.
out of Mountain Dew bottles.
Do you have a picture of that at all?
No,
Oh man,
no.
I can only imagine that must have looked amazing. Um, I want to ask a little bit specifically about the sighting that you had of the female by the river.
Right.
So you had said 75 feet away, right?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, so to put that into perspective for listeners, that is just over the length of a standard bowling alley, I believe. So we're talking very close, extremely close. Um, Curious if you remember any details about the face at all. Do you remember how the eyes looked? If they had whites around the pupils, or if they were all just one color?
It looked really dark. So all around the eyebrows and by the cheekbones, the eyes seemed to be sunken in a lot. And so the brow was almost like a baseball cap over its eyes, if you will. Not that it sticks out that far, but yeah, it was super dark. And I don't remember seeing any whites in its eyes. It was really just dark. Like the whole eyeball took up, or the whole pupil part, the color part of the eye took up all of the whiteness.
Gotcha. Were there any ears visible or anything like that?
Ears. Let me think. Yeah, maybe on the, because it was we saw the right of it. So
Okay.
kind of, you could kind of see an ear, but I don't remember anything sticking out like you or I. It would have been like stuck within the fur.
Makes sense.
The chest kind of looked dark, brownish black, and you could kind of see breasts on this thing.
Gotcha. A lot of witnesses will say, it's covered with hair, but you can see muscles under the fur. Is that kind of what we're talking about there?
Right. You could see down the side of her back. You could see where the fur was really thick and darker right down the spine. And then some of the thigh had a huge muscle difference between the front part of the thigh and the back part of the thigh. You could see that there was a line there. And that was like very descriptive, like, dude, this thing has muscle, you know?
It's wild. Did you notice any details about the nose at all?
The nose was kind of turned up. It didn't stick out very far at all from the face. It kind of was pushed in, and it had lots of wrinkles, went down by the mouth. Kind of like when people would draw a funny cartoon of a pig back in the late 80s, but major dark. Glistened between a reddish and brown.
At any point, did you see teeth at all?
No, sir, I did not see teeth. She stood straight up from a squatting position, so feet were flat, and her booty would have been almost setting on its calves. And it just stood straight up, shoulders to the side, arms to the side. And as it walked like you and I, just arms would stride with the legs, and it went straight through the river.
Wow. Growing up in that school out there, did other kids have report sightings of things as well? Or was yours the only one that you really remembered?
In my school, I can't really remember anybody else except for one other guy, and he saw a sighting about 6 miles from where I saw mine. But when he reported it or was talking about it, he was young. He was maybe about 19, so he had just graduated. He saw it between here and Kasaan, which is the native village close to us.
Gotcha. Which is that's about what, 20, 25 miles?
I would say, yeah, maybe 30 would be tops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I remember you said your dad's reaction when you told what happened was he got some of his buddies or coworkers. They ran off with with weapons to try to find it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Um,
Dad totally knew that we were freaked out. He could see the look on our faces of all of us young men. And again, you grew up here, you hunt a lot, so you see bears. He knew that I was not looking at a bear.
Absolutely. You also mentioned that your dad was a minister as well. Um,
Yes, sir. Still is.
what was his reaction to what was being seen on this island as a minister?
His reaction was, the Bible cites that, there's sights and wonders that we can't explain. And he totally bought into it. He totally believes in Bigfoot and UFO.
I love that. Mac. I love that, dude. That's amazing.
Right. And again,
man.
when I explained to him that when you're true at heart, that these things arrive, and that again kind of goes with the biblical sense of, if you really are who you are and you're fine with it, why not invite these things? I don't know how to describe it. It's weird, man. It's almost like whatever these creatures are know when you're at true bliss, and they just want to be a part of it. And it's almost like, oh man, these guys are having so much fun and I want to be a part of their party. I want to be a part of that action. But then when they're spotted, the reaction that we give them is not the response that they want. Instead of hanging out with them, we get kind of worried and like, nah, man, and we leave. And that's almost like a biblical sense of somebody trying to have a lot of fun and saying, but I have leprosy and I can't hang out with you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow.
So it's weird.
Such a unique way of looking at it. It's very, very different than a lot of other things that I've heard on the show so far. But I mean, this topic has so many different ways of looking at this phenomenon and what it is and why it's drawn to us. A lot of people will say it's because of traumatic events, but to hear what you've said, something completely different and kind of refreshing as well. I noticed in the areas that you mentioned, which would be Thorne Bay, Kasaan, Klawock, and Craig, those are really, if you look at it on a map, I mean, they're across the island, but they're not too far away from each other. I mean, Klawock and Craig are not too far in Thorne Bay and Kasaan. So I guess my question is, do most of the sightings and accounts of Sasquatch on this island happen in that area, or are there other things you've heard from, like, let's say, the far north of the island as well?
Well, that's a good question. So you would think that most people would see Bigfoot and these things in the woods when they're way out hunting or camping or hiking and fishing and really, really, really remote areas. I mean, we're already in rural Alaska, but to get way out, you would think that that's when they would see them, but it's weird. It's like they almost see them within 2 or 3 miles of town, sometimes literally right in camp. The mill that they saw in Klawock, it's a huge mill. It's a big lumber mill and lots of saws, lots of forklifts, lots of big machinery, lots of logging trucks coming and going. So to have one walk right through the mill yard where people are working and talking in broad daylight, so much that they shut the mill down, that's just crazy. It's like, whoa, like if they're that comfortable to get that close to society, it's kind of freaky.
Oh, absolutely. And I was just thinking of the other story that you shared where it was a family that went into a school and the school was shut down.
Yeah, I heard that from the chief at the time of Kasaan. So he had a dinner at our house. He went to church with my parents, and we had a potluck dinner at my house after church, and he just started telling about a bunch of those kinds of stories. And you can see in his eyes, I mean, this guy believes in the Lord. He goes to church, but also he wasn't at all fearful about saying, but look, these things happen in my village. And I think my parents we're okay with that because my mom had her encounter on Eastern Washington way before I was born and way before my sister was born. But again, none of those things were really told to us till after I started talking about my experiences.
Absolutely. You know, a question for you because, well, actually, I want to comment real quick so I don't forget. First off, the show you were trying to remember the name of, that's Expedition Bigfoot. So if people are wanting to, you know, look into that, just look up Expedition Bigfoot, and there's a season, I believe, about Alaska. Also, Dr. Robert Alley, I've met 2 times. He's an amazing individual. He's got a few books out about Southeast Alaska. People should go check those out and get some copies. Amazing encounters in there as well. But I guess one of my last questions for you would be, you know, you have a really interesting way of looking at things because of your background. So when you think of what you saw and what's reported, are you thinking of these individuals more as, you know, some kind of ape or some kind of human, or is it something completely different that we have going on here?
You know, I would say that it's man, it's all of those. And it's all of those in itself and individually and at the same time. It's weird because you could say, yes, I do believe it's some kind of an ape. I do not believe that it's some kind of ancestry human of any kind that had been lost and hasn't evolved. I don't really believe that way. And again, when you see these weird lights around, it could be that it's some kind of an alien creature that gets put down to do whatever for a while and then gets taken back in a ship, or it just walks through another vortex or another dimension that we just yet to figure out how to get into or tap into. That's why I honestly believe that when you're at true at heart, I think that's when you're the most acceptable, or if you will, to the dimensions being opened, or your own vortexes and your own core spirit open instead of being so segregated.
That's a cool way to put it. But what a great conversation. I do want to talk to listeners for a bit. If there are people that have been listening to this episode, usually the Prince of Wales Island ones really draw in new listeners. If you know about these accounts that were told, or maybe you're someone that was involved with them, please reach out. I would love to talk to you and make sure that your account is documented properly to help other people as well. You can reach me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. But Nick, it has been such a privilege to have someone like yourself on the show who has a wealth of knowledge. I noticed your book is on Amazon. Is that the best way that you would prefer people to get a copy of that, or is there another way?
I believe that's the only way.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So guys, I will make sure to have a link for Nick's book down in the show notes or description, wherever you're listening, Mythical Owl. And please check that out. You can get, hard paper copy, or you can get Kindle copy. And I can't wait to get one myself. I purposely held off because I wanted to hear it directly from Nick first, but I can't wait to go and read it as well. But Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Any other closing thoughts before we end our time together today?
Jeremiah, I just want everybody out there to understand that, it's not about keeping your eyes peeled in the woods and trying to find those things. I think that if you really are loving the people around you, that these things will appear to you instead of you having to try to find them. It's a whole different fishing game when you do it that way. I think that when we look for things, we miss all the other opportunities that are out there, or we miss the steps of success because we're skipping stones to try to make something happen, when you should just live your best life. And then these things just start adding to you as a gift. And it's really, these creatures can look right into your soul. A lot of people say the same thing when they see a wolf for the first time in the wild. Like, wow, it looked like it was looking directly into my soul. And I honestly believe that's part of it. Is it's not about trying to hunt for Bigfoot. It's trying to be the best you, and then these things will arrive.
Man, I love that. Such a great way to look at it. But Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show. Definitely, if there's ever any updates, feel free to reach out. You can send me an email. But thanks so much for chatting today, man.
Thanks, Jeremiah, and all you Bigfoot researchers out there. Just keep up the good work. It will happen one day that we find the truth.
Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Nick's story sticks with you not just because of what came out of the water, but because of how it echoed through the rest of his life, from a single moment by the water to lights in the sky to a white owl waiting on the back of his car. So huge thanks to Nick for sharing those powerful and mysterious experiences from Prince of Wales Island, and for reminding us that sometimes when we're at our most joyful, that's when the veil between worlds gets the thinnest. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss new episodes, and share this with someone who's into Bigfoot, Alaska, or just a good old mystery. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to follow the show, and if you can leave us a 5-star positive review, it really helps more folks discover these accounts. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter, especially in Alaska, Prince of Wales Island, or anywhere in the U.S., I'd love to hear anywhere in the world, I'd love to hear from you. So please email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Thanks again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. If you haven't already, make sure you check out our new membership community. It's www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com and click on the members login area. That's where you can find a special episode just for members every week, ad-free episodes, early release episodes as well, in a way where you can connect with others that are really into the Bigfoot subject. Check it out. You'll be glad that you did. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there, and see you in the woods.